my favorite theme in all of that was to be thankful for the girls who speak up and know their mind and have some of that stubbornness, because they are the ones who will be running the schools and running the companies when they're adult.
Are you ready to live your best life, make healthy choices, have success, have fun, and still have time for everything else? I'm here to teach you how to do that, and we'll all learn together from guests along the way as well. Follow along for some powerful tips on cultivating gratitude, making healthy choices for mind and body, and having fun doing it. What if all the angst and worry actually don't help? Oh my goodness, let's keep learning how to do this differently.
OMG. Hello, my friends. Today we are talking about something that is very close to my heart. And you know what? That's probably true of every episode, let's be honest, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm a mom. I have a son and a daughter, and today I'm going to be speaking about daughters and women. But of course, please know that some of these things could apply to anyone. Everyone shows up in the world in their own personal way. So if we're going to talk about living well on this podcast and doing that without all the worry that comes from anticipating the worst and second guessing ourselves and letting our negative brains win, then we need to talk about being empowered. And we also need to talk about being kind. And we need to talk about that from a perspective of being a girl and then a woman out in the world. Now, I'm a very stubborn person. You can ask any of my family this, and they will tell you. My longtime friends, I think, have had a glimpse as well. I don't necessarily let that show at first. I mean, we have to put our best foot forward after all, right? But it will show up eventually. I studied international business diplomacy in school, so I'm off in the Switzerland of my friend group. I've been called the Even Steven, and that's because I don't sweat the small stuff. And goodness, as I get older, I sweat even less of the small stuff. And I'm often the peacemaker in a situation where I don't have a strong preference. But if I do have a strong preference, look out. Stories of me around age 13 are kind of legendary amongst my relatives. I wish they weren't, but here we are. I don't know why I keep needing to hear about myself at age 13. I was not a rule breaker. I was not a kid or a teen or a young adult that was really ever in trouble, but I was stubborn. Put that in all capital letters. And I was apparently not afraid to verbally stick up for myself in my family, in my house, and in, I guess, other situations. Now, my memory of this is a little more vague than my parents' memory, but I fully believe that that is the truth. So, as an adult now, I know how to use my stubbornness a little more wisely and maybe a little more subtly, but it's still there. That's a piece of me. So, this brings up today's topic. Was it okay for me to be particularly headstrong as a teen and a young adult? Was it actually a good thing? Except for when I took it too far. I get it. Sometimes we take it too far. What would taking it too far actually mean? What do I mean when I say that? When does sticking up for myself as a teen girl move into being obnoxious or being mouthy? These are tough questions. And I don't necessarily expect to be able to answer them in one podcast episode. What I want to do is make us all think. So again, while I'm talking about girls and women, this could be any teenager. There's so many of these things that as we're growing up, we want to think, what's the goal? What are we teaching our kids to do when they go out in the world? And is that really what we want? Because as we've talked about many times, recognizing our thoughts and our beliefs is the first step to either choosing the most powerful and productive ones, or learning how to change if we see an area in which we want to change. I've recently seen a few mentions on Instagram about this very question. How are we raising our girls? Women being nice versus women being kind. Kind versus nice. Empowered and kind, and what it all means. So if you see any of these accounts on Instagram, you'll see what I mean. One is Raise Her Wild, and she posted a quote, a meme theme, I suppose, recently. Let's stop teaching our daughters that being nice is more important than having a voice. 100% agree. Now, I hope I wasn't teaching that to my daughter. And at the same time, in some circumstances, I think we don't realize it. Then I Might Be Funny One was quoting Rebecca Papin, I may be saying that wrong, who is a writer, on Instagram recently. And here it was. A pilot to my 5-year-old daughter a few days ago said, "Do you know you could be a flight attendant when you grow up?" The 5-year-old said, "I could also own the plane." Mic drop. Now, I'll add to that, she could also pilot the plane or run the airline. Boom. Isn't it interesting how these little things maybe don't catch our attention at first, and then when we think about it, we can do anything we want. Maybe we want to be a flight attendant. Fantastic. Maybe we want to own the plane, pilot the plane, or run the whole airline. So some girls seem to be inherently a bit more stubborn or more willing to fight their corner naturally. I was a pretty shy kid overall, and still it comes out of me sometimes, believe it or not. But when it mattered, I was fully willing to hold my position. My daughter was the same growing up. If she felt strongly about something, maybe not doing something or getting something or not having to go somewhere or whatever it was really tough, almost impossible to change the situation or change her mind. Other moms used to tell me stories about their girls and give their advice and their observations. And my favorite theme in all of that, and I would love for you to tell me on social media, drop me a note, whether you've heard this too. My favorite theme in all of that was to be thankful for the girls who speak up and know their mind and have some of that stubbornness, because they are the ones who will be running the schools and running the companies when they're adults. I just loved that concept. Maybe sometimes it's inconvenient if we want our kids to go somewhere and do something and we want it to be easy and simple. And at the same time, we're growing people who should know their own mind and should be empowered to make decisions. I love that concept. They're going to be the ones running the companies someday, and they are not going to get walked all over. Fantastic. So whether I was interacting with my own kids or my students when I was teaching or a Girl Scout troop or whatever, I really loved trying to keep that perspective in mind. Stubbornness might be inconvenient in some situations, but that kind of personal belief and empowerment is awesome in adulthood and kind of a lifelong way of being. So at the same time, we also know that women who do speak up and do, again in quotes, fight their corner, sometimes get criticized in the workplace as well. I was looking at an article from Fast Company, and this article came out in early May of 2023. It was listing out 30 critiques holding women back from leadership that most men will never hear. And I don't want to get too far into this because I do want to stay on nice, kind, empowered, but this is really quite interesting, and I think I'll come back with another episode on women in the workplace as well. What this article found was that there were 30 different traits that women often heard or were held back because of that were just basic traits about people. Age, attractiveness, class, color, ethnicity, health, parental status, do they have kids or not, whether they were pregnant or not, religion, seniority, that seems like one that men would probably hear as well, but you can hear all of these things. These are just aspects of people and their lives. Should not be something that is empowering or disempowering necessarily. And they mentioned in the article that it almost didn't matter whether a woman was young or older, whether they had a lot of education or not a lot of education, or one race or another race. There were always critiques that were identified in any of those cases. And women were held back from leadership opportunities. And how could you fight against that? Whether you're single, married, or divorced, maybe you're being held back for really no reason. So there was no personality trait sweet spot because introverted women and extroverted women both potentially were critiqued. Maybe introverted women not seen as leaders, extroverted women viewed as more aggressive. Just something was never quite right. Now, this is a little bit of a pessimistic article, and at the same time, we want to understand that this is all subjective and vague things that we don't want to internalize and we don't want to take personally. And that's really what they were pointing out. If somebody is trying to critique a woman in the workplace, they're going to find a reason. And it's not necessarily going to make sense compared to another reason that is critiquing another woman. So I read all of that to say, if we don't take that personally, and we know that no matter what we do and no matter how we are, potentially we might be critiqued for something, then how do we go forward? What do we want to teach our girls and ourselves about interacting with the world at work and school and social? Do we want to be nice? Do we want to be strong? Do we want to be kind, empowered, loud, whatever? We may not want to be known as difficult or argumentative, so how do we strike a balance there? So let's talk about what these words mean: nice, kind, and empowered. So being nice. If we were to teach our girls, or all of our kids, to be nice, usually we're talking about being polite, right? Being polite towards others, being considerate, friendly towards others. There's a lot of emphasis in the word nice, and you may not realize this, but when I was kind of digging into it, I did see this. There's a lot of emphasis in the word nice about being more gentle, being respectful towards other people, and maybe avoiding conflict, avoiding confrontation. And confrontation is not something I like, but it's necessary in life if we need to stand up for ourselves. So the problem with nice is that sometimes, if that's the focus, we're not setting our boundaries in a healthy way. And you've probably heard talk of boundaries recently. This is so important, and there's about a million ways we could interpret it, but being nice, sometimes we're potentially allowing people to take more advantage of us. We're not necessarily standing up for ourselves, depending on how we interpret that word. What if we flipped to talking about being kind? Kind, if you really look into what this means and how we tend to interpret this word, it's more than just being polite. It focuses on empathy towards other people. And this was a topic of a recent episode. It focuses on showing compassion for other people and concern for other people's well-being. What do they need? We want to understand other people, actively help them, and be supportive. It's a more active word, sort of in a more I'm here to help you way, but more empowered. And I don't even know if I'm explaining that right, but hopefully that makes sense. It has a more verb connotation than nice does. Then we have empowered, which is one of my favorite words to describe a way of being and a way of acting. So if we're talking about empowering girls in the world, empowering people in the world, we mean that we want them to have confidence. We want them to believe in themselves, have self-esteem, and be able to comfortably and actively make their own choices, set goals, and go for them. Believe in their abilities, speak up for themselves, and potentially challenge the norms in society or in their setting, wherever they're learning or working, that might limit them. And this is breaking down stereotypes in all different ways. So could we maybe consider replacing the word nice when we're teaching kids how to act with kind and empowered? Do you agree? It's strength with a healthy dose of caring for others. And I just feel like it's such a fabulous recipe for how we go out into the world. So, if you agree, how in the world do we do it? How do we replace nice with kind and empowered? And how do we teach girls to go out into the world, grow up into women, and actually do that?
Over the past few years, as a network marketer, I wanted an authentic way that I could focus on the power of mindset and being myself and create a business. And I found the Social Selling Academy with Kristen Boss. I have learned so much about social selling and direct selling. And if you think that would be great for you too, go to www.bit.ly/SSAOMG and grab your $100 off link there. Well, from my perspective, I was really lucky to have some fantastic female role models in my early career. I held 2 internships during grad school in which I worked for strong women. My second job after grad school, after a quick first job in which I really despised my boss and it was not a good setting, but I met my husband, so I guess that worked out. But my second job after grad school was at an airline, and I worked for a woman who truly shaped the way I interact with others in a professional environment to this day. And maybe you have someone who, maybe they're a parent, maybe they're a teacher, maybe they're a boss, maybe they're a colleague, whatever, who has really shaped the way that you interact in a professional environment to this day. And if you do, I am so happy for you because this is powerful stuff. So, believe it or not, her name is Cheryl as well. And after a while, many people on our team took to calling us Big Cheryl and Little Cheryl. Now, you can imagine this is a work environment. They did not do this to our faces because let's just pause and ask ourselves, what woman wants to be called either big or little in a work environment? There are none, I don't think, but we knew and we tried to squelch it as best we could. It was meant, I think, in good fun. Cheryl was a kind, empowered, and driven woman before it was cool to be that way. There were not 20 plus years ago, as many women in leadership roles in corporate environments. So let me share with you some of the things I learned from her. The first, and I was going to say most important, but I don't even think I can say most important. These are all powerful things. The first thing that I want to mention was I learned to speak up. I learned to go into the meeting, whether it's a small meeting, a big meeting, whatever type of environment, and when I knew my stuff, say it. Speak up, take the chance. Now, along with that came know your stuff, be prepared, and then speak up. And that's not necessarily something that me, even though I do have the stubbornness, I grew up a little more shy. I didn't want to take a risk and be wrong. I did not ever like to be wrong. Who wants to be wrong? So I had to practice, and you can start practicing. Now, part 2 of that is then listen. Speak up, then listen and discuss. Because just because we feel strongly about something doesn't mean we're right. So listen, discuss. And if you know your stuff, you can do it. Great lesson. Now, second one, put your name in the hat, I'm going to call this. So if we could teach our girls that jobs, projects, whatever type of opportunity, even if you aren't sure you're totally ready, put your name out there for it and try. You can learn, get in the ring, make your name known. This is such a powerful lesson as well because, and again, this is a stereotype that is obviously not true for all women or for all men, but stereotypically, in many cases, we don't necessarily stretch towards the job where we don't have all the qualifications. And men often do. So put your name in the ring, name in the hat. Put yourself out there. Number 3, she taught me to take all the options. And this is quite related to number 2. But by this, I mean the opportunities to listen in, the opportunities to meet people, to be in the conversation, to attend things, whether it's a meeting, a conference, a dinner, just, come in early to meet with the VP about whatever and sit in the room. Take all the options. Quite related to number 2. Get your name out there. Next one, she taught me to argue for what I care about. If I know I'm right, I've done the analysis, I know what the best decision is, and I fully believe it, argue it. It's not our job to figure out how people will think about us.
We might have to fight just a little bit harder as a woman in a work environment. And that's changing. I see it changing, but argue for what you care about in a professional way, which leads me into the next one. She taught me to always have high standards for myself in the way I dress, in the way I speak, in the way I behave, be above personal criticism. So you've heard dress for the job you want. Now, I work from home now. I don't dress up all the time. And at the same time, I try to put myself forward with the best way of speaking. I'm not going to be crass, as my mom would say in a work environment. I'm not going to get into gossip if I can catch myself, as long as I realize. I'm going to behave in a professional way and be above people's critiques of me as best I can. Now, following that, she taught me no one's perfect. You're going to mess up, try again. You're going to mess up, try again. And then my very favorite one, this is number 7 if you are listing them. She taught me the most important leadership lesson that I don't know if I would have learned, at least certainly not as young as I did. When you are a leader, stand up on behalf of your team in every setting. Have their backs. In a meeting, in a presentation, in a discussion with other people, even if they're wrong and they messed up. She said, I have my team's back. Now in private, boy, did we get corrected or redirected or assigned differently. We knew, but she stood up for her team. What a powerful thing as a leader. And dare I say, women are fantastic at that if we know how important it is. She was teaching me to be an empowered leader, and I soaked it up. So if we're talking about being empowered, and these are things that when we're raising girls, we want to make sure that they know. And when we're raising ourselves from the 20s to the 30s to the 40s to the 50s, what do we want to remind ourselves of? What are key traits? We heard the definition of empowered and kind, but what are key traits that maybe we could put on a sticky note or in a note in our phone and just kind of remind ourselves, this is how I want people to describe me. So let me give you a list of those. Number 1, confident. Believe in your abilities and believe in your ability to express your ideas. And if you don't yet feel that way, then do a bit more work to make sure that what you're about to say is really what you stand behind. And then just practice. The interesting thing about confidence is the more we practice speaking up and acting confident, the more confidence we grow. It's absolutely growable. Now, setting goals and embracing challenges is the second one. So at the beginning of my career, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. And I think many women and men are in this situation. I job hunted. I don't know that I had a passion for any particular thing. I changed careers a couple of times. Last week's episode about following your fun was fully meaningful to me as I kind of went through my path. So what would have served me well is to focus a bit more on setting goals and taking on challenges. I think I had the challenge part and I didn't always set a goal. Where do I want to be in 5 years? What would I like to learn how to do? That is an empowering thing to do that and to just have that in our minds, because once we plant something in our subconscious mind and we attach some emotion to it, happiness or excitement, for example, then our brains are working behind the scenes on that all the time and things do happen. All right. Number 3, speak up. Like I was saying, oh my goodness, advocate for yourself and for others when needed. You can, and it's powerful. Another trait, make sure that you build a support team. And by support team, I don't mean working for you. I mean family, friends, mentors, allies. They can guide you, they can encourage you, they can correct you in a way that is palatable and just calm us when we're having the bad day and we're in a situation we don't know how to handle. It's a powerful one as we're trying to be kind and empowered. Now, another big one, resilience. Like I said, you won't be able to do these things every day. Your daughter won't be able to do these things every day. Your teenager won't be able to do these things every day. We're going to fall down. We're going to mess up. We're going to have a bad day. Or things are going to happen that we're out of our control. Resilience is the way that we overcome those setbacks. It means getting back up. And I remember once someone telling me you have to be like one of those punching dolls. And this is going to age me, but I think there used to be these blow up clown things where you could punch it and it would fall down and then it would pop up by itself. I hope no one's punching you literally, but life will punch us occasionally. And we got to get back up, and maybe we adjust. Maybe we just try again. Resilience is a superpower. And then the last one is to be the best example that we can be. And this falls under kind and empowered. If we're going through our interactions with people and we are acting in a way where people can look at us and say, wow, I want to emulate something that she is doing, we're changing the world. Lead by example. So whether you are raising the next generation of professional women, you're teaching them, or you are them, grab a few of these lessons, go back and listen again and find even just one or two of them that maybe are a little different for you. And maybe you could tweak how you're going out into the world and try it. Know your worth. You are powerful. You are strong. You are worthy. You matter. Every day will not be perfect. You will mess up and you will fall down. And then you're going to get back up and you're going to change the world. And so I'm adding to the playlist this week, Fight Song by Rachel Platten. I think it fits exactly with this topic. And please message me on social media if you have thoughts on this topic. If you have lessons that you've learned from women leaders and women mentors that have empowered you as well, and I will share them also. This is a huge living well lesson, and we can all always keep growing. So, cheers to you. I sure hope you enjoyed today's episode. OMG, I would be so honored if you would take a moment, leave a rating, and leave a review. Let's get this message out further into the world. Make sure you've subscribed as well, and why not grab a screenshot and share it on your social media. Now it's time to head down to the show notes and see the resources I mentioned. Go find what you love.